Adrian N. Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a regular session of the City Council to be held on Monday, February 3rd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting such business that may properly come before the City Council.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a regular session of the Dubuque City Council for February 3rd, 2025. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio and written input during the sections of the agenda where public input is accepted. Input options during the live meeting include in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any public input on the item they would like to speak to. Remote attendees can log in to GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appear on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate which item you would like to speak to in the chat function or note that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. If you are participating via phone, indicate which item you would like to speak to during the appropriate section. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/councilcontacts and through the City Clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. This information will be reiterated during the meeting. Attendance for the session is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel. Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
And City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Kavanaugh, I will turn it over to you for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Adrian. I invite all who are able to please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to consent items. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the consent items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Please state the item you would like removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and consideration, and consent items can be found on pages 1 through 4 of the agenda.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Do we have anyone here in chambers who would like to remove any of the consent items for separate discussion this evening? Seeing no one here. Anybody virtually?
No input.
Thank you. All right, back to the table then.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick.
I move to receive and file the documents, adopt the resolutions, and deal with the consent items as recommended.
Second by Farber.
I got a motion by Resnick, second by Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye. Yes.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next are items set for public hearing. We have two. First is Southgate Drive Sanitary Sewer Improvements Project. Initiate public bidding process and setting date for a public hearing for February 17th, 2025. And second is Fuel Island Rehabilitation Project. Initiate public improvement bidding process also for February 17th, 2025.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel.
I move to receive and file, adopt the resolutions, and set the public hearings for February 17th, 2025.
second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Roussel, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
We'll move on to boards and commissions. We have application review for the Airport Commission, Cable Television Commission, Community Development Advisory Commission, Equity and Human Rights Commission, Investment and Cash Management Oversight Advisory Commission, Long Range Planning Advisory Commission, and Transit Advisory Board.
All right, thank you, Adrian. We'll go with the Airport Commission first. We have one 4-year term through September 14th, 2028, and one applicant, Bob Woodward. Do we have anyone here to speak to this application this evening? Come on up.
Mr. Mayor, council members and staff, Bob Woodward, 1048 Bonnie Court. I've applied for the Airport Commission because I have an interest in aviation in general and the airport in particular. I just want to continue to see it be successful, grow, and I am a private pilot. I've had a private pilot's license since 2019, but my interest is broader than that. I have an interest in education, aviation, general aviation, corporate, and commercial, and want to continue to see more done out the airport and continue to see it continue to grow and expand. I have been on a number of both private and public boards, so I understand the difference and the respective roles of boards and management. So I have something I feel like I can share in that regard. And so basically I'm looking forward to just trying to offer whatever help and assistance and input I can on behalf of the public.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob,
for
for
questions.
your comments. We appreciate it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the Cable Television Commission. We have one 3-year term through July 1st, 2027, and one applicant, Tom Eckerman. Do we have anyone here to speak to that application? Yeah, please.
Mr. Mayor, council, staff, my name is Tom Eckerman. I live at 642 North Burden Avenue in Dubuque, and I am applying for the Cable Television Commission Media Services to get more involved with the development of the PEG funding as that rolls out. I know that I have a myriad of experience in different programs dealing with stage, film, and TV, from New York to Los Angeles to London, and I think my strongest asset would be to help evaluate equipment requested for these grants, and also to help bring the knowledge and experience that I've had over 25 years working around the globe in that industry to help promote and I want to try to give confidence to people to try to grow their creativity. So it's less of a documentary and more of bringing in creatives, allowing them to find reasoning to use the funding and to apply it to bring this community together and send a message in a different way.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Tom, for your comments. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, we have the Community Development Advisory Commission. Here we have one 3-year term through February 15th, 2026, and this is a vacant low to moderate income representative. And then one 3-year term through February 15th, 2028. We have 2 applicants, Talma Brown and Michelle Hinkie. Do we have anyone here to speak to either of these applications this evening? Seeing no one here, anyone virtually? All right.
I'll just note that written input was submitted by both applicants.
All right, thank you very much, Adrian. Next up, we have the Equity and Human Rights Commission, one 3-year term through January 1st, 2028, and 2 applicants, Talma Brown and Tracy Phillipson. Anyone here to speak to those applications this evening? Seeing no one here. Did receive something from one of the from Talma Brown, I believe. Yes, thank you, Adrian. Okay. Next up then is the Investment and Cash Management Oversight Advisory Commission, one 3-year term through July 1st, 2027, and 1 applicant, and I apologize for any pronunciation I get wrong here, but Lucian Pausian. Do we have anyone here to speak to this application? Seeing no one here, anyone virtually? Thank you. All right. Next up, Long Range Planning Advisory Commission, one 3-year term through July 1st, 2025, and 1 applicant, Jason Davis. Do we have anyone here to speak to that application this evening? Seeing no one here, nothing virtually.
Mr. Davis did submit written input.
All right, thank you very much, Adrian. And finally, we have the Transit Advisory Board. We have one 3-year term through July 30th, 2026, and 1 applicant, Talma Brown. Do we have anyone here to speak to that application? Seeing no one, knowing that we received something virtually. Okay, then we can move on to public hearings, please, Adrian.
At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the public hearing items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input for the public hearing you would like to speak to, and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function and state your question, or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input for the public hearing you would like to speak to. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Just going to announce our public hearing tonight is I'm on Ice Arena Dehumidification System Upgrade Project public hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I
Jones.
move to receive and file the documents and adopt the resolution.
Second.
Got a motion by Jones and a second by Resnick. Mike, please.
Thank you. Assistant City Engineer Bob Schissel is recommending City Council approve the plans, specifications, form of contract, an estimated cost of $1,265,800 for the Imon Ice Arena Dehumidification System Upgrade Project through adoption of the attached resolution. The Imon Ice Arena Dehumidification System Upgrade Project will include the installation of a new secondary dehumidification unit on the lower roof of the southeast side of the facility. The new dehumidification system will require structural support modifications to the roof trusses, will include installation of circular fabric air dispersion ductwork routed the length of the arena, new gas piping, new electrical poles, and a new automated control system that will control both the existing and the new dehumidification systems. The new dehumidification equipment will be installed in a location that would not be impacted by the installation of a potential future second ice sheet. I concur with the recommendation and respect for the request, Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. We're on a public hearing to consider City Council approve the plan specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Imon Ice Arena Dehumidification System Upgrade Project. Do we have anyone here in chambers to speak on this topic this evening? Seeing no one here. Anyone virtually?
No input.
All right, thank you. Okay, back to the table then for any discussion. Mr. Resnick.
Thank you very much. Mr. Van Milligan, the last statement you talked about said that would not be installed in the location. Is it possible that this dehumidification equipment might be used for the second ice, or would that have to have some more muscle, or are we anticipating perhaps looking ahead that we could take care of two birds with one stone, if that's familiar with you?
Good evening. Bob Schissel, Assistant City Engineer. The potential future second sheet would have a total different operating capacity of the main arena, so they would have to have a totally separate dehumidification system than the main arena. So this new system will just cover the main arena.
Well, you mentioned that the system is designed to work with what we already have, right? So this new system is going to work with the system that we already have, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so we have an existing
Right.
16,000 CFM dehumidification system now, and it just doesn't quite have the capacity to handle the ventilation needs in the main arena during the summer months. So the existing system still has a good 10 or 15 years of service life. So the recommendation is to add another smaller supplemental dehumidification system to the main arena to supplement the ventilation and the dehumidification inside.
So do they operate individually and then get that impact, or are they actually coordinated with?
They will be coordinated, so we'll be upgrading the system controls when we do this, so that we can integrate both together and that they'll both work together.
Okay, so that leads to my next question then. If we have a second sheet of ice, the three systems will then be coordinated and organized together, right?
They will not.
They will not.
A second sheet will have to have its own standalone dehumidification system.
I just saw in drawings that there is a connection between the two, that people can walk from one to the other in certain drawings. You know, these plans are just proposed. But so even if they're connected in some way, the dehumidification systems do not have to be coordinated.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or discussion? Don't go anywhere yet, Bob. Still, okay. I got a quick question for you. Just, can you talk a little bit more about it's not often that we see the parts that are not recommended, but there was more to this project that we were thinking of, and there's some things that you're not recommending going forward. And if you could just talk about that a little bit more, I'd like some clarification on it, please.
So when we originally put together the budget for the improvements at the ice arena, we were hoping that we would be able to look at the dehumidification, also potentially add air conditioning to the arena space, and also add an emergency generator. But as we got into the consultant team came on board and they analyzed the existing arena and what would be needed, and then develop the associated cost estimates. Unfortunately, the air conditioning of that space was significantly more than what we had budgeted, unfortunately. And then the same thing came through with the emergency generator. We were hoping again for the air conditioning so that we could potentially add air conditioning to the arena space so that we could potentially host a dry floor event, say a concert in the summer or have other activities in the arena. And that would help with, obviously the air conditioning would allow that. The other thing was that potentially we would be able to use the facility as a cooling center or something like that if we needed to. So then we thought, okay, if we can get an emergency generator, that could help as another resource for the city, should a natural disaster or something happen. But again, unfortunately, those prices came in a little more than what we had budgeted. So when we took a step back and looking at the priorities, we are recommending that the dehumidification system be tackled first. And then we can, we can budget for, some of those other improvements at a later time. Or, if the second sheet of ice were to advance a little sooner, all that could potentially be, coordinated together or, thought through at a more comprehensive level.
All right, thank you for that. A lot of good stuff for us to be thinking about as we start to think about budgets for next year. I think that's very helpful information to know. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Bob. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Okay, well, motion here is to receive and file and adopt this resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
We'll move on to public input. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting may address the City Council on the action items on the agenda or on matters under the control of the City Council. For all in-person attendees, please approach the podium and state your name and address when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Individual remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and the overall public input period is limited to 30 minutes. Under the Iowa Open Meetings Law, the City Council can take no formal action on comments given during public input or that do not relate to the action items on the agenda.
Thank you, Adrian. Do we have any public input this evening? Seeing no one here. Anyone virtually? Thank you.
No input.
Nothing there, okay. Last call before we move on. Okay, we can move on to action items, please, Adrian.
Action item number 1 is Dubuque Police Department 2024 Awards and Recognition Program.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Farber.
I move that we receive and file and hear the presentation.
Second by Sprank.
Motion by Farber, second by Sprank.
Hello, council members and city staff. My name is Bruce Deutsch. I'm a lieutenant here with the police department in Dubuque. I appreciate you giving us a minute here tonight to kind of speak about our awards and recognition program. Our awards and recognition program started in 2010, that was its infancy, and we've kind of been expanding it since then. Our goal of this program is to recognize past and present Dubuque Police Department personnel and the things that they've done throughout the year. We really focus on service to the community awards and also along with any officers that might go above and beyond the call of duty. I did pass out some pamphlets for you to kind of look at for this year's award ceremony, which we held back in January. Our goal for this is to actually just kind of shed a little light on some of the great work that our people are doing here in the city. So we established this program to kind of make some concrete things to be able to put some kind of teeth behind the awards we're giving out to the officers and give some meaning to what they are. And so we established several types of awards, which I'll go through here in a minute. We established a committee which listed out duties and procedures to leading to officer selection, and then also our awards presentation. The nice thing is that anybody can submit an award for an officer. So an officer seeing another officer do a great thing they can submit that award into the committee. The committee then reviews it and see if it meets the standard of one of our award classifications. So in our initial committee, we identified 2 classes of awards. So you'll see tonight I'll talk about a Class 1 award and a Class 2 award. And then we designed kind of these cool little kind of ribbons that the officers then can display on their uniform during any dress uniform events. So our committee then consists of 1 officer from every rank. So we have a regular patrol officer, we have a corporal, lieutenant, and a captain. And then we also can have a citizen on that board too if they were elected to that board also. It kind of gives a nice rounded viewpoint from different people at different ranks and different positions within the police department. So pretty well-rounded committee. As I talked before, our Class 1 awards. So these are kind of like the most prestigious awards that we could give out for the police department. Thus far, if we've given out 70 awards, I think, over the history of our awards committee, we've only given out 4 Class 1 awards. So they're prestigious. We have our Legion of Honor, which is our highest award that we could give to a member of our police department. This is presented to a member of the police department who in the line of duty distinguishes himself or herself by performing an act of bravery or valor which involved imminent personal hazards or risks of life, having full knowledge of these risks with a subject armed with a dangerous weapon. The Legion of Honor is the highest awarded presented by the Dubuque Police Department. We have our Gallantry Star, which is presented to a member of the Dubuque Police Department who in the line of duty distinguishes himself or herself by performing an act of bravery or valor which involved imminent personal hazards or risks of life, having full knowledge of the risk while using sound judgment and tactics. The Gallantry Star is the 2nd highest award presented by the Dubuque Police Department. And then we have our Wounded in Combat. This is presented to a member of the Dubuque Police Department who receives a wound in the line of duty, which is inflicted intentionally by an adversary with a weapon with the intent to inflict serious harm or injury to that officer. So those are our 3 Class 1 awards. We have several Class 2 awards. I won't go through and read all of these, but some of the more distinguished ones will be our Significant Injury on Duty, our Distinguished Service Medal, our Police Commendation, a Certificate of Merit, and then our Life Saving Award. We also have some other Class 2 awards that also kind of identify what the officers are doing within our police department. Some of those on here are listed as our Field Training Officer to recognize those who take their time to train our new officers. Our Specialty 1 Tactical Award, any officers that are involved in any of our specialty units to include our TAC team, SWAT team, negotiators, K-9 handlers, mobile field force. And then we have our Specialty 2 Advanced Skills, and then our Specialty 3, which is Full-Time Specialty Unit Awards, along with any instructor pins that officers might be instructing, firearms instructor, less lethal, chemical munitions, things of that nature. So that's a brief rundown of our awards. This year we held our 4th annual event, which I think most of you are able to attend, and we really, really appreciate you all taking the time to come out and see us and this is kind of like our black tie event, right? We don't get dressed up very often because we probably don't like it very much, but it's a nice night to get everybody together, family, and then we all kind of get to dress up and have our dress uniform on. You know, it's a special evening for us. So this event kind of included a formal honor guard presentation at the beginning of the event. We do a national anthem, which we select a local area student to help do that honor for us. We do an invocation and benediction from the Dubuque Police Department chaplains. We have the ability that we have a photographer that donates his time that comes out and allows the officers to take family photographs at no cost to the officers or their family. And then we recognize any retirees in 2024, along with promotions. This is done by Chief Jensen and City Manager Mike Van Milligan. Then we do our review of 2024 recipients. We do the presentation of their awards. We usually have a nice little paragraph that we read off to explain to everybody what happened, what the officer did, and why they're receiving the award. We also, it's been a big part of ours, but we talk a lot about wellness and officer wellness, and we integrate that into our presentation also. We have a couple doctors in Dubuque that are great to us. They come in and talk about officer wellness and things that we can do to make sure we keep ourselves well. And then we also have a little bit of time for social hour between all of our family and friends. It's always nice to see each other outside of the work environment. So this year we talked about our retirees. We had 3, Captain James Lemke, Lieutenant David Hoppert and Officer Jeremy Slight. We had many anniversaries. We celebrate them in the 5-year increments. I'm not going to go through and read off everything, but as you can see, we've had, I think there was 26 what I would call significant 5-year increment anniversaries this year. Notably, we have 4 that fell into the 30-year mark, with only 1 that was a retiree, and that was Lieutenant David Hoppert. Promotions this year, we had 7. We had 3 corporals, 3 lieutenants, and 1 captain. We celebrate those at that time too. And then we had our awards for this year. So we had 4 police commendation that were given out this year to all the lieutenants listed. They took the lead on revamping our field training program. It was about a 2-year process. Obviously, there's a big emphasis on training our new officers. We see quite a few, so they knew that this challenge was coming and helped kind of revamp that program to kind of streamline it to help us deal with all the incoming new officers. We had several certificates of merit. I might not be able to remember all of what they were for, but Lieutenant Chad Craywell was for a large check forgery ring. That was a nationwide thing that he spent quite a bit of time and helped make several arrests on. Lieutenant Kane Hoffman's was a burglary that he then followed up on, which led to a large seizure and search warrants outside of the city of Dubuque at some farm property that resulted in confiscated drugs and guns. Austin White's led a major drug investigation that reached national level that stretched from here to all the way to California and resulted in large seizures of weapons and drugs. Jason Horner, he headed up our DARE program and hosted the DARE conference this year, and we've been told it was the best DARE conference that they've had to date. Jason did an excellent job. And then we had Officer Riley Lightson received a life savings award for applying a tourniquet, and the medical staff at the hospital said if it wasn't for the application of that tourniquet, that individual probably would have lost their life. So we just like to recognize all these officers and the things that they accomplished throughout the year. And then as you can see, we also have a list at the end of the program, if you can turn your attention there. It kind of goes back through the history of our program and all of the awards that we've given out since its inception. And that will be it for me. So thank you very much for taking the time to hear me out this evening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Lieutenant. We have any questions or discussion? They may want to talk to you, so
Yeah.
hold tight for a second.
I was just in a hurry to get out of here, you know.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
This one deserves public comment. You didn't mention Dr. Munt, veterinarian whose office is now in Piasta, who almost since the onset of the canine programs in Dubuque has taken care of our dogs and the county's dogs, and been there in the middle of the night when something was the matter with one of the dogs, and I don't think has ever charged us anything for all of that care.
No, she hasn't. And so every year we do have a kind of like a citizenship award. And this year's recipient was Dr. Munt to recognize all the things that she's done for all the local canine departments. We had canine units that came to our awards night this year for Dr. Munt that come from different states because she provides services to a lot of their dogs. And call her in the middle of the night, she never hesitates to come in and help with a sick or injured dog. So she's great. We truly do appreciate her. Thank you for bringing that back up.
But
Mr. Jones.
that's a big deal.
It is, very big deal.
Tremendous value.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Ms. Farber.
Yeah, speaking of big deal, the whole night was a big deal, so thank you for the extended invitation for us to join you. And it was also great to see the fire department was represented to support you as well. And it was just really fun to sit down and chat with the different families, and especially the young kids who were so excited to watch everybody in their blues, and just the whole formality of it, and just the community of everyone there and the support. It was a real true family, so thank you for extending that offer to us as well.
Yep, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Well, Lieutenant and Chief, I see you sitting back there too, and everybody who works on the force. I'm so glad that you take this opportunity to do this. I see it's the 4th annual, so it's something that's fairly new in doing this, but I think it's just so incredibly important in the work that you do in an incredibly stressful environment. And I think to celebrate each other and to celebrate the ways in which people have served this community above and beyond in the roles that they play in the police department, I think is a great, it's just a great thing that you're doing that. So thank you very much for that, first of all. Thank you for the invitation to each of us. I know we all would love to be there every single time, and when we can, it's kind of heartbreaking, but we appreciate that invitation. I'm glad that we did have some good representation there that evening too. And just finally, thank you. We say this a lot to you, but thank you for the work that you do for our community.
Well, we appreciate it, and we know there are a lot of people out there that do thank us for it, so we always like to hear it, though. Thank you.
Yeah, we think you're doing it well, and we really appreciate it, so thank you.
All right,
Thanks
thank
for
you
being here
very
tonight.
much.
All right. Motion here was to receive and file and hear that presentation. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick. Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 2 is proceedings for directing sale of not to exceed $6,500,000 tax exempt general obligation bonds, Series 2025A, $8,500,000 taxable general obligation bonds, Series 2025B, $9,250,000 taxable general obligation urban renewal bonds, Series 2025C, and awarding bonds to best bidder.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents, hear the presentation, and adopt the 3 resolutions.
Second.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Roussel. Mike, please.
Thank you. Chief Financial Officer Jennifer Larson recommends City Council approval of the suggested proceedings for directing sale of the not-to-exceed $6.5 million tax-exempt general obligation bonds, Series 2025A, $8.5 million for the taxable general obligation bonds, Series 2025B, and $9,250,000 of taxable general obligation urban renewal bond, Series 2025C, and awarding the bonds to the best bidder. The bond sale was held today on February 3rd, 2025 at 10 a.m., and the results will be reported to you here in a minute, both by Chief Financial Officer Jennifer Larson and by our bond advisor, Tiana Pooler of Independent Public Advisors. In conjunction with the bond sale, the City of Dubuque was issued a credit opinion by Moody's Investor Services. Moody's Investor Services has affirmed the City of Dubuque, Iowa's issuer rating and outstanding general obligation unlimited tax bonds to AA2. The credit strength included the city's role as a regional economic center with solid resident income and full value per capita. Financial operations are strong and will remain so despite declines in fund balance over the next few years as it expends funds from the pandemic. Long-term liabilities and fixed cost ratios are moderate and will remain so despite future borrowing needs. Moody's upgraded the city's rating to AA2 in July 2023, and that was reaffirmed for this issuance. The improved rating assists the city in securing the best terms for financial products like loans, which can provide substantial savings for the city and taxpayers. According to Moody's, the issuer rating was upgraded to AA2 because the city has strong financial operations and ample revenue-raising flexibility, which has resulted in steadily improved available fund balance and cash. The city serves as a regional economic center, and its regional economic growth rate has outpaced the nation over the past 5 years. The city's local economy is likely to remain strong because of its mix of commercial and industrial industries, stable population, and steady tax-based growth. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval and now await the presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike.
Good evening to the mayor, council, and staff. Thank you for having me. Tiana Pooler with Independent Public Advisors. Mr. Van Milligan already highlighted on the rating, so that was a nice accomplishment, a AA2. That's a very strong rating. As he mentioned, we did have 3 competitive issuances today. One, the 2025A bonds. We received 7 bids, the lowest bid being from Robert W. Baird at a TIC of 3.79, which is about 12 basis points lower than where we estimated. We had the 2025B series for $8.3 million. We received 5 bids for those, And the 2025 C Series, 8.9 million, those are both taxable. We did pretty much see the same banks bid for both of those series. And the TIC, the true interest cost there, was 5.1 and 5.15 compared to an estimated 5.72. So taxable rates have come down a little bit. This has been a good outcome. Just a little bit about the purposes. For the A Series, a lot of that is being paid by Lost and Greater Downtown TIF to fund things, a lot of fire improvements, some airport, a little bit of Central Avenue streetscape, and some vehicles for refuse. We did receive almost $400,000 of extra proceeds just due to the way that those bonds were sold. And so you're going to have a little bit more to spend even though rates are even lower, so that was great. 2025B, primarily Lost and Greater Downtown TIF for fire ladders, ice arena. The Greater Downtown TIF portion funds various things, primarily smart parking. And then the 2025C is a separate issue for the Schmidt Island project that's actually being paid by DRA. So that's why we sort of isolated that one from the other taxable issuance. I definitely recommend that you award to Baird for the 2025A and to Northland for the B and C. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Thank you, Tiana. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ms. Farber, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And wow, congratulations on those rates, especially for the exempt. That's quite good for the people that actually buy the coupons and then also those for us in terms of what we have to pay out. The difference, just to educate the exempt versus the taxable, could you just explain the difference between the two for us in terms of what's taxed versus what's not and why?
So generally speaking, we're referring to the difference between bonds that are federally exempt versus federally taxable. So the income on that investment that the bondholder gets is either taxed by the federal government or it's not. So for a large variety of projects, generally essential corporate purposes, things that are general government purposes, streets and buildings and those sorts of things, the federal government essentially subsidizes those projects by foregoing interest earnings on their behalf on the earnings that the holder is going to earn. So as a result, you get to pay less interest because the investor doesn't have to pay taxes on that income. By contrast, federally taxable bonds typically have some sort of private interface. Either it's something with regard to maybe like it's doctor's offices or some sort of public building that has a partially private use. And so the federal government is a little bit more stringent about not giving that tax exempt benefit. And as a result, whoever holds those bonds does have to pay taxes and they pass that additional rate on to you. So when you pay your debt, you're going to pay a little bit higher. So is that?
Yeah, it does. And so for the first muni bond, that's double exempt, Iowa as well as federal?
The first one is not Iowa exempt.
Just federal exempt.
Just federal exempt. The third one is an odd mix of being federally taxable but state exempt because it's in the urban renewal plan.
Gotcha.
The state exemption is a little harder to pin down because really it depends on the investor having to pay Iowa income taxes at all. Because if the investor's not in Iowa, this benefit doesn't mean anything to them. And so what you're actually going to see is that both of these pretty much price the same. Usually, just because we've been seeing that, I don't always recommend even separating based on that tax distinction because you don't always get anything out of it. It really just depends on who buys it and we don't know who that will be. But in this case, we did it because of the Schmidt Island portion of it because you're not paying that debt and we just thought it would be more transparent and easier to track if it were its own issuance.
Well, thank you for that explanation, and hopefully the broker-dealers will be able to move it very quickly once we sign off on it.
Oh, I'm sure they will be waiting and asking me when you adopted the resolution.
Gotcha. So. Well, thank you very much. It's very competitive and very much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. Thank you for the good information. Here's another one for you. Because I've been trying to understand the term full value per capita, and you look it up and it just says something like the total value of something divided by the total population, giving you the average value per person in a given area. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what is that exactly, and why is that important? Is that a positive comment on our hardworking citizens, or What does that actually do? Could you help me with that a little bit?
The intention is it's a way to try to estimate the economic strength of an area. So the full value being the value of all the property within the city of Dubuque, dividing that by by the population to get some sense for, how much do each of these parcels, or how much are they worth in general. We do that, Moody's does that, primarily because they're tasked with assigning ratings to a wide variety of issuers across the country. And so this gives a way of trying to translate how do you look at a community that has 60,000 people and a valuation of $5 billion versus a community that's much smaller and only has 10,000 people but a really high valuation. You'll see places where the valuation per capita is very, very high because maybe it's a lucrative bedroom community, or places where it's really, really low because it's a college town. And so it's a way of trying to erase some of those things that make it harder to compare. But that being said, Moody's has made a positive comment about your economic strength. They regard that well. They think, the AA2 rating is definitely indicative of the fact that they consider that to be a credit positive for you. They have noted that in terms of things that could lead to an upgrade at some point, it would be increases to fund balances, even more improvement in the economic base, but they have noted that your economic base is quite strong.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you
to
for
talk
having
with
me.
us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? Tiana, as a non-finance person, I really appreciate you being here and explaining things in the way that you do. It's very helpful, I think, because you just mentioned the word transparency in one of your descriptions that you gave. This is one of those things that I think can easily confuse just general members of the public if we're not all really involved in the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. So the way of explaining that in a way that a community can understand, I think, is a really important skill. And I really appreciate that you have it and you share it with us. So thank you. Thank you very much for your partnership in this and for offering the service that you do. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed working with the city for a very long time, and staff is also fantastic to work with. And really, their hard work is reflected in these good ratings and all of this attention. So a lot of kudos to them as well. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, the motion here is to receive and file and adopt the 3 resolutions. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones. Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye, that motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 3 is banking services agreement.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file and approve.
Second?
Got a motion by Jones and a second by Farber. Mike, please.
Thank you. At the November 4th, 2024 City Council meeting, the City Council approved the recommendation to award the banking services agreement for the City of Dubuque to Dubuque Bank and Trust. City Attorney Crenna Brumwell has negotiated a banking services agreement with Dubuque Bank and Trust effective September 1, 2024. While Dubuque Bank and Trust could have taken the position that the new banking services agreement did not take effect until the date that the City Council approved the award, November 4th, 2024, they chose to select September 1, 2024 by choosing this earlier date. The city received over $300,000 in additional interest based on that decision of DB&T. I respectfully recommend Mayor and City Council approval of the banking services agreement with Dubuque Bank and Trust. And I would mention that since this material was all put together, and it talks about the affiliation with HTLF, that affiliation has changed to UMB, and so that'll be reflected in the final agreement.
All right, thank you, Mike. Crenna, I'm going to start with questions, if that's okay. So there's one of the questions that came up from, we got an email from a community member asking about this, and I know that you responded with some answers to basically clarify what this agreement is. But I do still have a question. First of all, I think, we did the RFP, and we understand what the RFP, the parameters were in there with the DB&T agreement. And then we did the banking services agreement. But one of the things that isn't listed in the, I guess I could put it this way, in the things that I'll be signing here in terms of an agreement is the actual parameters of that agreement we have with DB&T. Can you talk more about that? Because like on what we have for our documents here doesn't say, for instance, the interest rate's going to be and things like that. I was just a little curious why that's not included directly in there.
Yes, so if you look at Exhibit A, the RFP that was put out by the city is the first part of Exhibit A. And the second part of Exhibit A is the DB&T response to the RFP. And then in the Master Services Treasury Agreement, we incorporated references to Exhibit A, which adopt the responses, the terms, and the information proposed by DB&T as part of the larger agreement.
Okay, that's very helpful. So basically, the whole document that we have here in the agreement, those exhibits will be included in that, and the Master Treasury Services Agreement that you're writing, that you came up with there is referring to Exhibit A and some of those different things that are in Exhibit A.
It was edited to incorporate the pieces in Exhibit A into the term of the agreement, the larger agreement, yes.
Excellent, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. Other questions? No further questions or discussion? Well, then I will just once again say thank you for your work on this, Krenna and your team and the finance team as well, and then also to DB&T for working through this with us. And specifically, I do think it's important that we point out, DB&T did not have to date this to the point where they did necessarily, and be able to provide the taxpayers of Dubuque with the extra amount that was given since we dated it since we backdated it essentially. And thank you for that. I think that it was very helpful. I think it was showed a very good faith in working through this, and I think this has been a good process to get through. Lots of questions, lots of good ones, lots of discussion, but I think it's been a good process, and we've appreciated that process, and I think we ended up with a very good agreement here. Okay, motion here is to receive and file and approve. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye, motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 4 is City Focus Magazine, February 2025 issue.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel,
I move to receive and file.
Second by Sprank.
on a motion by Roussel, second by Sprank. Mike, please.
So while I don't have any formal presentation, City Focus Magazine is a magazine that we publish 1 to 3 times a year, and it's then mailed to every home and business in town. So in round numbers, we print about 25,000 copies of this. And we get a lot of compliments on how informative it is to people in our community, back to this transparency idea, to try and summarize for them, at least in this one, about what kind of partnerships the mayor and city council enters into and what the great benefits of those partnerships are.
Well, thank you, Mike. Do we have any discussion or comments? Ms. Roussel?
I just want to say that I think this issue was a great summary of all the wonderful things we have going on here in our community. And I hope that all of our residents will take time to read it. And I also shared this with a number of friends who no longer live in Dubuque, just to kind of make them jealous so that they know all the wonderful things that we have going on here. So if you haven't read it, please do.
Thanks, Ms. Roussel. Looking forward to welcoming your friends back to Dubuque. Yeah, Mr. Sprank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, echoing a lot of what Laura said. It is well-written, beautiful pictures, good stories, and I've used it myself when I ran into new business owners and such who are new, or folks that are new to the community, just to give them an idea of what's going on. So it's a great publication, and my hat's off to the team that put it together. So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sprank.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Farber first, then Mr. Resnick.
Ditto to my colleagues here, and also I use this as well to share with nationwide. Just not only is it a superb marketing piece, so kudos to Randy and his team. I mean, it's really outstanding in that respect, but it's very easy to read, easy to understand, and it is a great promotional piece. So again, kudos to everybody.
Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that not only is great showing off what we're doing and letting people know, but it also stimulates public brainstorming. I got a couple calls about some of the information in here, like they looked at on page 16, they the large pack site that's green and beautiful, and they said, well, that would be a great place. They suggested we talk about public housing and some more housing opportunities there. And we talked about that site and what the situation is, but the important part is that this also stimulates citizen input and citizen brainstorming. We have a lot of caring citizens out there who care about Dubuque and what's going on here. So it serves many different purposes. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
I'll just say between this piece and the GDDC piece that was recently published, it'd be pretty hard not to live here if you read both of those.
Well, for my part, I will say, Mike, I always appreciate your intros to these. I'll say the same to the team that put this all together. Continually doing great work, and it really is a great piece. But Mike, you do encapsulate things really well when you just say, everything that's going on here. But I want to make sure that I give you some actual props for the things that you did that you attributed to me. A lot of that line that you put in there that you said that I said out loud, which I did, came from you. And I want to make sure people know that with the Field of Dreams project, Chaplain Schmidt Island, that whole list that's there, it came from an email exchange that Mike and I had. And it was a great idea. And it definitely was fun to say out loud. And the best part about it was, I said it at the announcement of the medical school at University of Dubuque. And when I sat back down, Governor Reynolds, who was sitting a couple seats away from me, leaned over and said, "Isn't it fun when you get to just list things?" And she was right. When you get to say all these different things, all the list of great things that are going on in the city of Dubuque, and we all get to share in that. Everybody here has been a part of that. People who are our partners in this publication have been a part of that. Lots of people throughout the community have been a part of that. This is something that we're all sharing together, this progress that we're making and this renaissance that we're going through. And it really is fun to be able to have a list to talk about these days. So let's keep it going. We've got a lot of work left to do, and we keep talking about it every single week when we're here, and I know that we're all definitely ready for it. So very exciting times to be here for sure, and it's nice to be able to show everybody. All right. Motion here is to receive and file this particular document. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 5 is work session requests, Greater Dubuque Development Corporation updates.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel?
I move to receive and file and set the work sessions for the dates recommended, the April 21st, July 21st, October 20th, and January 20th of '26.
Second?
Got a motion by Roussel and second by Resnick. Those dates are all connected to city council meetings, so I'm thinking they're working for us. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Next are council member reports.
The reports that we have this evening.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones?
I attended the Local Emergency Planning Commission meeting on the 23rd of last month, and very, very low-key, quiet meeting, which tells me that things are in pretty good shape. That's a group of emergency managers, fire and police, volunteer responders that meet together to do disaster planning and mitigation planning, primarily with a hazmat focus, but they also bring together the funding that helps with hazardous materials training for all of the regional fire departments and corporations that desire it. So it was, anyhow, I'm pleased to report that everything there is in very good shape, and I was glad I got to get out there and see what was up. I got to attend the Chamber of Business forecast last Thursday where Kevin Depew, an economist from the West Coast, spoke with great hope for what this year could bring, and with some trepidation that some of the things that some people think are going to be good for us won't be. So stay tuned. But for the most part, he anticipated perhaps a 2% growth in GDP based on the trends that he sees. Changes in DC may impact that in the other direction. So, and lastly, tomorrow the community is going to say goodbye to a great leader, Don Vogt, who managed our Public Works Department for a long time. I worked with Don almost every day I worked here in one fashion or another at the fire department. He was He was up and coming in the Public Works Department. He helped us streamline the defect and repair reporting system from a paper system that I guess if a mechanic didn't feel like doing something, that piece of paper just get lost, to a system with two-way accountability and prioritization, and helped us to really streamline that. He knew everything there was to know about running a landfill. I've been on that landfill operating board for almost 20 years now. And Don was just a tremendous resource there, not only knowing what was going on in our backyard, but in communities all across the United States. So he's going to be greatly missed. Now he's done doing all that stuff, but the other things he was doing today still mattered very much. And I regret that I won't be able to be part of that memorial tomorrow, but God bless you, Don.
Thanks, Mr. Jones. Any others? Yeah, Mr.
I
Esmond.
just want to add a couple more words about Don Vogt. And, both Mr. Jones and I worked with him on the landfill board. But, and Mr. Jones mentioned his capabilities, intellectual, and I just want to talk to you about the heart of a great public servant. And we've got so many employees here with a heart of service. And how many times did he look up to the skies and think about, what's best? How can I keep our citizens in Dubuque safe from what's coming or the potentialities? And, there's a caring that's connected to that intellect that we're so very fortunate to have with Don Vogt and others. And I just want our citizens to know. And I let the grieving widow know that we appreciate. We hear so many great things about our employees when we're out in public, and I wanted to just express that to her. We appreciate him not only for what he knew and did, but how he felt about our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Esmond. Yeah, Swethel.
I, about a year ago, came to council and spoke about a goal of community action for our council, but also our entire community to find ways to keep schools safe. And so I have, in the last year, walked with a lot of people who are passionate about this mission, and there's many more in our community. I wanted to acknowledge parents, students, concerned citizens, brain health advocates and professionals, county officials, our fire, police, sheriff's department professionals, EMS, public and parochial school superintendents and staff, as well as Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque. So we have been working very diligently on trying to come up with ways that, first of all, what do we need? Second of all, how could we find funding for what we need? What are the opportunities at a federal level to be able to help our community? It's not just the school system. It's not just the city. It's all of us. And so we found a grant, incredibly excited about pressing forward that even this month to plan some additional application processes for this specific grant. That grant was taken offline this week. And so I just want everybody to know that's been involved, I am so grateful, and this is not done. I know that we will find ways to fund what we need to fund to keep our schools, our students safe, our families well. And I just wanted to take a moment to say, this isn't over. This is just the beginning, and we're going to find ways to keep our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wethel. It's a little bit on the note of what I was going to say. Last week on Tuesday, we received word that just kind of suddenly that all federal funding was frozen. And I think anybody that I've talked to that had anything to do with federal funding has had the same reaction. It was sort of I would say there was some sheer panic that was involved for a number of different organizations. Thankfully, some cooler heads, I think, prevailed, and all federal funding is not frozen. There's going to be some more pointed changes, I think, coming from our federal administration. We said a few weeks ago, as we were going through this transition, and I know we've talked about the fact that it's just a time of uncertainty. There's a great deal of uncertainty in what's going to happen next and how things are going to work. I think the only certain thing is that things are going to be very different, and we knew that going in as a city council. I think we knew that as a community, but things are going to be very different at the federal level, I should say. I do want to make sure that people recognize that when we received those phone calls and that message last week that there was a potential for freezing federal funding or all of it or just some of it, any of those things, the people in the city of Dubuque went straight to work communicating with our federal delegation in Congress, communicating with anybody we could communicate with in the new Trump administration. We're still getting to know them, so I want to be really transparent about that. I think everybody I know is still getting to know them and trying to figure out how to move forward within this administration. It's only been a couple of weeks after all. But what we did right away was make sure that we continued to work with the partners that we have in Washington, D.C. to continue to do the good work that is being done here in Dubuque. That's really important that people recognize that, because that is how good government is practiced. That when things get sort of different and things change really quickly and drastically, that we keep our heads on and keep moving forward and keep trying to get good work done. And I've thought a lot about that since then, and I want to say that I am still very optimistic that there's going to be a lot of good work to be done in the next few years and in our time here on this council. I think there are many different ways that we're going to be able to do that. I know that we'll continue to travel to Washington, D.C. We'll continue to call our federal partners in Washington, D.C., and we're going to continue to do that. And we're also going to work very closely with the community partners that we have here. And I know that each of us at this table does that. The City of Dubuque as an organization does that. And just as a community, we work together and we take care of each other. And that's definitely not going to stop. We are going to be doing the same things that we've been doing. We are going to be taking care of each other and working together. A couple of examples of that this week that I've noticed since some of all this is happening. There's been a lot of mayors groups getting together. There's an Iowa Mayors Association that started not too many years ago, and I'm thankful to be a part of that. We had a meeting last week to talk about some of the things going on in the legislature, which I'll mention the legislature in a second here. Dubuque County mayors also get together. So we had a nice dinner out in the Epworth City Hall last week, got together and talked about some things. Members of ECIA are there. A couple of the county supervisors were there to join us. And we talk a lot about county issues and things that are going on, just discussed all the impacts of the legislative actions that could be coming down the road here and how it's going to affect each of us in the region. So it's nice to be able to hear from fellow mayors and fellow cities that are in Dubuque County with that. We are going to have an air service forum here in Dubuque on the 28th of this month. So February 28th, it's a Friday, 9 a.m., Hotel Julian. If you can put that on your calendar, that would be, love to have anybody there who can show up. We want to do an update on what's happening with air service in Dubuque. There's a lot of good things that are going on. There are a lot of challenges that continue to be there, but we're continuing to do a lot of great work in that area. And then just last week, we received word that we have received the second phase of funding from Bloomberg Philanthropies for the Youth Climate Action Program. And I'm very excited for that. That was something that we learned of when Gina Bell and I traveled to Dubai at COP. They announced this there. And very excited that we now have $100,000 to work with for youth in our community to be able to go forward and practice climate action in the way that they want to and talk about the projects that are going to be exciting to them. I did travel to Des Moines one day last week to talk to our legislators and had great meetings with each of our legislators who represent us right here, and then some who represent us just outside of the city of Dubuque, and then some who are actually representing different parts of the state but working with some important things. For instance, I talked to Senator Dan Dawson, who is a key person in working through the property tax changes and property tax proposals that are going on, and then also Senator Scott Webster, who is the chair of the local government committee in the Senate, and had a great meeting with the two of them to be able to discuss things that are on their mind in ways that, and they took the time to hear from me as both the mayor in Dubuque and the president of the Iowa League of Cities to say, this is what cities are thinking about. This is the ways that we're practicing. And what I will say was there was a lot of agreement at the table about things like transparency and being responsible with taxpayer funds, things that we do here on a regular basis. I'm going back to Des Moines this week. I'm going to keep going back later this month, and there's a local leaders day in March. We're going to continue to meet with each other on a regular basis like we do. City staff's going to continue to do the great work that they do on a daily basis. We are going to keep moving forward, no matter what we see and no matter what things might feel like sometimes, because I think big change brings feelings of chaos. And what I want people to know is that we are going to continue to work together with all the partners that we have to keep doing really great work here in the city of Dubuque.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Ms.
If I
Farber.
can just add to that, I want to give a shout out to the League of Women Voters, who on Saturday, and Mr. Spank joined me in that audience, had what they call a Cracker Barrel, and they will talk about issues both on the representative side as well as on the Senate side for the state of Iowa. It was very it was extremely well attended at 9:30 in the morning, and once a month they plan to do these. And so just from a advocacy perspective, questions from the floor were entertained for almost an hour. And they were very good questions, very specific about issues that impacted not only the residents personally, but the city of Dubuque and some of the groups within the city of Dubuque as well. So I think just a shout out and just to put it on your calendars, because it's really worthwhile, and the legislators take the time to join us and to share information with us. So thank you. Yep.
All right, we do have a closed session. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move that the City Council go into closed session in accordance with Chapter 21.5 of the Code of Iowa to discuss pending litigation and the purchase or sale of real estate.
Second by Wethel.
And a motion by Jones, second by Wethel. For the record, the attorney the City Council will consult with on the issues to be discussed in closed session is City Attorney Krenner Brumwell. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel. Jones.
Aye.
Roussel. Kavanaugh.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. We are in closed session.